Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootleggers, shills, dustlighters, peasants, vassals, mon petit idiots. Hello, I'm a useful idiot, and today I want to talk about France. And this is the last in this recent series of Eurozone countries that are either in a depression or heading for a depression. And one can debate over the numbers that we get, saying that they have a recession, or they're not in recession, or they had a double dip recession. That's all a moot point, because we know all the numbers that we get from the government and all the numbers that we get from the economic sector are all fudged. They're all lies. So if you adjust for reality into all the numbers that we get, it is clear that most of these countries are in what we would normally consider a depression. Certainly the unemployment rates alone are enough to call most of these countries as part of a depression. So now we move on to France. So we've done Greece, Portugal, Spain, and Italy, and now we go to France. And remember, these are some of the biggest economies in the Eurozone. And should we see further collapse in any or all of these countries, there will be a lot of economic devastation to come. And it will certainly have an effect on everyone. And a lot of it has to do, of course, with the counterparty risks and interbank connections, all the transnational global corporations, all the bad loans held on books across the world, and just all the feedback loops that get unleashed when there's more economic collapse, and particularly in the banking system. So anyway, like I say, let's get into some of the gruesome details about France and to decide whether they are in a depression or not. So we have one staggering figure to start with right off the bat, is that 56% of French employment is in the public sector. That's right, 56% of the people in France work for the government. So I could almost just stop there. And I could almost just do the video on the fact that 56% of French employment is the public sector. Staggering figure. And we have France now being the poster child with Hollande in office, and this socialist system they have in France, and it's going to come back to bite them in the ass. So let's move on to some of the other figures. Sales of existing homes fell 20% year over year. So that's a complete collapse in the real estate industry. Auto sales dropped 13%. New home sales fell 25%. So there's a collapse in the home sales industry. There's a collapse in auto sales industry. And this is only going to have more ripple effects as the rest of this year goes on. And jobless rate is at a 15-year high of 11%. So that's comparable to what we're seeing in some of the other Eurozone economies, although certainly not as bad as Greece and Spain and some other places. Real estate's been dropping as much as 42% in some places. So we have a complete real estate collapse going on in France, and we will see how that ripples through the banking system, because obviously, just like every other situation we've seen, real estate collapse in prices of real estate, and then the banks start taking huge losses or find creative ways to cover up huge losses before coming to the trough for either nationalization or more bailouts. Industrial production has been tanking in France since the last couple of decades. Actually, their industrial production is at the same level it was in 1997. So that's a 15, 20-year low for industrial production. So they're not going to import-export their way out of this depression/recession they're in. And in fact, last year, France nationalized its second largest mortgage lender. So just like in the United States, we find the government basically taking over the mortgage industry, particularly at a time when we have a collapse in the real estate industry there, which will only continue. And along with the collapse in auto sales, in fact, I saw recent articles that talk about overall in the Eurozone, the collapse in the auto industry, Eurozone wide. It's the biggest in 20 years. And part of that is going to ripple through the French economy because Peugeot alone is going to cut over 10,000 jobs at their auto plants. And then we have another staggering figures. In 1999, France sold 7% of the world's exports, and now they only have a 3% piece of the market. So they've gone from 7 to 3% in a little over 15 years. So a staggering contraction in production and exports in France. And they also, only 7 years ago, France had a trade surplus, and now they have a trade deficit. And they're pricing themselves out of the market in a number of ways. Of course, the taxes are incredibly high, and their government is really bloated, but they also have high labor costs, high wages, little flexibility to fire, and high taxes. Average auto worker makes 35 euros an hour, which is a lot in Europe, and they just they can't really compete, and especially in a country where the state spending accounts for 57% of GDP. So not only is 56% of French employment in the public sector, but 57% of French GDP is generated by the state too. So we have essentially a socialist nightmare in France, and all of this is going to come back to haunt them, and it seems to be coming back to haunt them now. So technically, they're having their second recession in 4 years, but once again, I would proffer that they are in a depression. In fact, Hollande himself expects zero growth in 2013. Zero growth. Sounds like a depression to me. And they've already been stripped of their AAA status, so that's a moot point now. And French Labor Minister Michael Sapin already said that, quote, effectively, he said France was, quote, bankrupt. So there's another official who inadvertently blurted out the truth on an occasion and said that what we all know is that France is bankrupt. And so I guess we can just say that France is in a depression. Those are pretty scary figures. And the fact this is a long-term trend as well. GDP has only grown by about 1% in the last 8 years total. So they're grinding to a halt. And so they join the lineup of European countries that, technically speaking, if we just cut through the bullshit and all the fudge numbers and all the cheerleading and all the smoke and mirrors, one could say that France, like Greece and Portugal and Spain and Italy, is in a Eurozone depression. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too. And remember, you're never too old to learn something stupid.